Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Tracy Keogh, Chief Human Resource Officer for HP Inc., formerly Hewlett-Packard. In her role, Tracy is responsible for HP's strategic HR activities involving the nearly 50,000 employees worldwide. So Tracy, first, thank you very much for joining us. This is a great treat for us. Can you share with us some of the real strategic challenges that your organization is facing right now?
Yeah, I think as with most organizations, the pace of change is just really fast and right now and will continue to, I think, accelerate. And so I think making sure that we're staying ahead of the market and the industry and delivering the kind of innovation that's going to set us apart. We've been able to do that since, we split as a company, which has been exciting. But we're all dealing with all the global competition, really trying to manage resources effectively. Nobody has as many resources as they need to be able to deliver. So how do you keep innovating to make sure that you're staying relevant and having the greatest impact that you can? But as a business and as a function, I think that's what we're all looking at all the time.
So you talk about change and having enough resources and just making sure that you're adapting well to this change. How does HR help with all of that?
Oh, I think HR is critical in that. First of all, I'm always looking and scanning the market to see how we can evolve our services to really help the business and make sure that we're bringing in the best people, that we're training them and developing them in a way that they can drive innovation, creating an environment where they can do their best work. We're looking at the org structure to make sure it's as effective as possible. We're looking at rewards and recognition that's going to drive the right behaviors and incent people in the right ways. So, I feel like HR touches every aspect of the business, and we're a critical driver of success of the business. So it's really important. And what makes it fun is it's always interesting because it's so many different areas.
So you're talking about HR touching every aspect of the business. So what are the competencies that you're looking for in your HR professionals that can actually deal with these kind of broad issues?
So we really look for people that, first of all, it's sort of, business acumen, communication skills, all those are baseline, they're table stakes these days. I want people who are really continuously curious, that they're always learning. Right now you don't know what the skill sets are going to be necessary for future jobs as technology's coming in, robotics, AI, all those things. So you want people who are continuously able to adapt and change. So I want HR leaders with that understanding. I love people that have actually been in different functions and then move into HR because they bring a different perspective. I like people with consultative skills so they can really elicit what the business needs and understand those things. And I want very intelligent, hard workers who are kind of mission driven, as we like to say in our organization, and excited about delivering for our company.
So you want really smart, really motivated,
That's right.
really energetic people who also are extremely curious and have these great skills, including business skills.
We can find them, though. I know they sound like unicorns, but we not only we find them, but we grow them as well. And so that's been one of our, I think, our most positive things is how we develop our HR leaders.
For those that are interested in joining the field, is there advice you'd give them as far as what they should be focusing on to actually have those kind of critical skills?
So first of all, I think HR is one of the best professions, and I started in business. I've run sales and marketing, I've run operations, I've run HR, and I chose HR over all the different areas because I think that you can have an effect across a whole organization so broadly. So, I just think bringing your experiences from other places and understanding that will make you a better HR leader. And I would say to people, take an opportunity to rotate into HR, see how you like it. A lot of people, it's funny, a lot of leaders will come into HR, and you've seen many companies put a business leader in place, and they think, I'll do it for a year or two. And then suddenly they realize this is a great job, and they're staying there. So I would say, it's something people should really get a sense of. And I think very forward-thinking companies often rotate their leaders through HR before they make them senior executives in the business, so that they're more effective in their roles later on.
It sounds like that should happen, since you've explained that HR is touching every part of the organization.
I hope it happens more, and I think people don't realize many people are doing HR in their day-to-day jobs anyway. That's what happened to me. I was a business leader in other areas, and I actually realized when I look back how much focus I had in HR areas. And then when I finally got to HR, I realized this was the right profession for me.
So your world has been really interesting over the last couple of years with the big change in the organizational structure. And among many of your responsibilities is communications. Mm-hmm. Can you share with us some of the challenges or responsibilities you had in terms of that, in terms of getting the word out to everyone in the organization?
Yeah, so in terms of communications is actually one of the prerequisites that I laid out when we were splitting our company into two. And I was talking to the CEO of one. I said, well, I'll come with you as long as I can own internal communications. So that just shows how important it is to me, because I actually think it's the most important lever in the organization. Communication is involved in everything we do. First of all, I think it's one of the most critical skills for a CEO to be successful is communicate effectively. We started our company with really being clear about what our strategy is. I think if you asked any employee at HP, they'd know the company strategy. So we do a lot of communication around that. And then, on an ongoing basis, we communicate about the values and the culture and business initiatives. So, I just weave it into everything that we do. We think about how do we communicate effectively, because that's really how you bring an organization along to whatever destination you want to go to. And I think HR can really play an important role, even if you don't own communications, helping to shape it for employees, both while internally it's important, but externally they're your brand ambassadors as they go out. So making sure they have the right messages and understand what the company is about. It just makes your organization much more effective.
So you talked about making sure that everyone is completely familiar with what the strategy is and getting that out constantly. Are there other real keys to making sure that your message is being communicated well?
I mean, I think, giving managers, if you look at different, we use our managers as a real focal point for communication because they're communicating to their employees. We created something called Manager Central, where on a monthly basis we give updates to the managers that they can use with their teams. It's the best way to disseminate information and help to craft it. And who doesn't want help in having some great key messages or PowerPoints or whatever it is to be able to communicate effectively? So I think making sure you understand who your audiences are, how they want to get their communications. In this day and age, we communicate on everything from, Twitter to our own internal HP kind of connection sites to our daily, we call it the Daily Ink, our daily internal newspaper. So there are just so many different ways to communicate, and what you have to do is communicate in all those ways because everybody wants the information they want in the way that they want it when they want it, and so you have to be very aware of that.
What are some of the challenges to making sure that, because you have all these different ways of communicating, that the message is going out consistent across each of these
So
ways?
we manage those effectively, and I always say, if you build it better, they'll come. So, that way we don't have a lot of people doing different communications. I think the biggest challenge, honestly, is everybody's inundated with communication all the time, and you can't know all the things that are going on in your organization. So I think it's just getting the messaging out because there's so many good things going on in our company, and which is one reason why we did Manager Central, because we find that people didn't know about certain things, and so it's I think 92% of our managers say that it's incredibly helpful and they love it. So it's the challenge is really prioritizing all the communication.
So as a member of the executive leadership team and leader of the organization, can you share with us some of the ways that the CHRO role might differ from some of the other position like COO or anything else that might be
Well,
there?
the CHRO is an interesting role because while the other members of the leadership team sort of represent their organization, the CHRO has to really represent all those different groups. First of all, you have to make sure that the leadership team is actually functioning well, and that you're communicating effectively, and that you're working well together. So nobody else has that responsibility as much as you do. You also have to tread a very fine line of keeping your CEO informed of the dynamics or issues that other, business leaders may be having without violating their trust. And so that is, I think, one of the most critical areas. Otherwise, your CEO will get out of sync and not understand some of the dynamics. And so what I always do, and I think my leadership team knows this, is I put their interests first. And they know I have their back, that they can trust me, and that I'm operating in their best interest. And so does the CEO. And so I will make sure that I let him know about things, sometimes without giving the specifics or who is the issue, so that he can stay in touch. Because often he's not necessarily privy to the dynamics that are going on in the organization. And if he gets too disassociated from that, he won't be effective in his role. And then the leadership team thinks, how come he doesn't understand what's happening? So it's a fine balance, but that's the fun of the role, because you're always there, and you can have the most impact.
So it's really interesting that you describe that as fun, since you have this remarkable responsibility of keeping people's trust and keeping CEO, and I presume the board informed also.
Well, and you have to be I think the important thing, and I've seen CHROs get confused about this, while you support the CEO, you don't only work for the CEO. You actually work for the board and shareholders as well. And so you have to balance that all the time, because you have to keep that trusted relationship with the CEO. So I'm always very transparent, but I've had on a few occasions to go to the board when there are issues, and you weigh those very carefully. So I think you have to be somebody who has the temperament to do that role effectively, but it's a challenge.
It does sound like a remarkable challenge. And it also sounds like the way you're describing it is that you're almost the coach to the executive leadership team.
I think you are the coach in many instances, and cheerleader in some, and sometimes the disciplinarian, right, when things aren't going well, and sometimes you have to manage an intervention. It's all of the above. So you're playing all those roles.
And you talked about trust. So is that another one of the core values that people have to have, in addition to the curiosity?
Yeah, so I think you have to be trusted, and or you just become ineffectual. If you are seen as the CEO's, just flunky, that you'll do whatever they ask, then you're not going to be effective in your role. And as I've said, I've seen many HR leaders fall on that sword by being too connected. That's why you have to be very clear about what your role is, who you work for, and how you work, because it can get muddied quickly. And you're going to be called on to have to make important ethical and business decisions that you need clear judgment on.
So it sounds like you also need a certain amount of courage to be in that role.
You definitely need courage, because and I've certainly put my job on the line in multiple instances, because I knew I had to do the right thing for employees or the company, and I've been able to navigate those. But if you are actually doing your job, you will have those moments of courage that you're going to have to rely on your own sort of values infrastructure to make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Thank you very much. You've made it really clear that if you're extremely smart, super motivated, curious, courageous, trustworthy, and understand the business, that this could be a perfect field for you.
It's a great job.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today, Tracy Keogh of HP shared her perspectives about how to create an effective HR function and its importance in driving the success of every organization. Tracy reminded us that HR is about strategically driving business success through talent optimization. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Masters of Human Resource program here at the University of South Carolina and the Center for Executive Succession, thank you for joining us.